morning and welcome to yet another episode of The Truth in Development with myself, Aubrey Masango. This is a podcast powered by the Ndiso Consulting Group as we try to understand the undercurrents of development, not only for South Africa but for the whole continent of Africa. Today we continue our conversation and we're going to be speaking specifically about personal finance and how personal finance can be a catalyst to not only self-development but collective development of the country of South Africa and the continent of Africa. And my guest is none other than Dr. Frank Magwegwe, who has become a name synonymous in South Africa with education around personal finance. He is a member of the faculty at GIBS, at the University of Pretoria, but he is also the head of financial wellness at Nedbank, and he joins me today to have this discussion. Dr. Frank, thank you so much for joining us. I really, really appreciate your time.
Oh, fantastic to be here. What an amazing topic. You know, to link the idea of personal finance with development at an individual level, but there's a lot of research that tells us what that can do at a country and, of course, at a continent level. Really looking forward to unpack that.
And I suppose that's a great place for us to start. What are we talking about when we have a conversation about development, particularly in the context of South Africa and the rest of the continent? What are we trying to achieve, even as we start to have this conversation?
I think for me, perhaps a couple of things come to mind. I think the first one, and I want to start there because I think it then enables other development to come through. I'm thinking first human capital development. In other words, us as individuals, what skills do we have that we can bring into the economy? And here, whether we are talking perhaps about personal financial management, whether we are talking about coding, whether we are talking about science, technology, engineering, maths, we are so in this world, the new world, should I call it, of artificial intelligence, right? So there are just so many things that are required to be able to develop a country and to develop a continent. And I'm specifically starting at human capital, because when we have that, what happens? People have creative ideas to start businesses, to grow businesses. What happens when you're growing a business? You are creating opportunities for others, whether it's employing individuals or sourcing your suppliers from other businesses, and they grow in that way. And so you can see the role of human capital. And of course, I will specifically focus on that human capital. What is it going to do with personal finance?
Whenever we talk human capital in the context of South Africa and history, particularly as it pertains to black people, one can't help but think of slave conditions that we come from, where people were deliberately kept out of the mainstream economy. People were given inferior education so that they can remain as laborious beasts of burden. So when you speak of human capital in the context that you are talking about, what are we actually talking about?
I really love that link that you're making, Rob. So I think for me, we're moving away from keeping people away, if you can put it like that, right? From choosing the skills that they want to develop and use those skills firstly to sustain themselves, their livelihoods, to contribute to their communities, and ultimately contribute to a greater country and Africa. And I think for me, one of the things we can see, perhaps, if you just look at the so-called developed countries, what is it that they do differently from us? I mean, there are many things they do different, but there is one area that they've almost continued to ensure that there's a big gap between developed countries, them, and us. If you think of the US, for example, think of Europe, think of Canada. And it is this investment in technology, both in skills to be able to maintain that edge they have, but also in building new technologies. Think about AI, for example. Think about COVID, when it COVID, and we had to develop vaccines. who developed vaccines? It's human beings, right? You need the IP, you need the skills. So for me, we're talking about people going into science, going into research, for example. We're talking about people going to engineering, whether it's civil engineering, whether it's aeronautical and chemical engineering, but also software engineering that has become even more important. What functions in this world without technology, right? So we really saying, and again, everyone, we saying, don't say women are not good at STEM. Anyone should actually be given an opportunity, to go in those areas. Coding schools, perhaps, during school holidays, introducing young girls, young men, at an early age to this world of technology. So for me, I'm particularly focusing on, when I think of development, kind of these things that are needed right now in the world. And, when we have those perhaps, for me, what happens is one of the things we often don't spend a lot of time talking about or being aware of is that South Africa and the continent, we've got one huge advantage over the US, over Europe, is that we are a young continent. And so if we take these young people and we put them into coding schools, we help them to become software engineers, they must think about what is the role artificial intelligence can play in Africa. What we have is in this advantage of youth in developing solutions that solve the problems that we have. But not only that, we have then enough people to consume our own product because we're a young continent. So for me, that's what gets me excited. And of course, to do that, that human capital, one of the things that it needs, whether you're talking science, whether you're talking technology, you're talking engineering, you're talking math, you can't do those things without understanding the role that money plays. To start a business, you need money. To say, I need to go to a coding school, you need to realize that maybe I need to put a little bit of money aside to save to allow me to be able to go to that coding school. So often, I don't think we spend enough time really understanding beyond saving, beyond budgeting, the role that knowledge of managing money can do at an individual level, household, community, country, and the continent.
You seem to be suggesting that whatever skills, whatever scientific opportunities that are lying out there in the world can be used in order to develop the country, but also the continent. But even before those skills and those scientific opportunities are taken up, we need to understand ourselves as commercial beings.
Yes.
We need to understand ourselves in terms of the idea that we earn money. What do we do with that money? Well, what does that money do to us?
Exactly.
In order for us to be relevant for the context that we find ourselves in for the purpose of development, if I understand you correctly.
I'm saying that.
How then is personal finance or the understanding of my relationship with money going to help us develop the kinds of people that will bring us the answers and the creative remedies for some of the problems that we have as a continent, as a country?
I love that question, bro. And I want to use a couple of examples. We all have had someone mentioning, I know this person, with the little money they were earning, they struggled to put their child in a good school. Whether we call it a Model C school or just a school a little bit better, I guess, than the sort of typical school that you find in townships where there still need to be a lot of development. And then we say, then that child managed to go to a university of technology. Look at them today. Just want to use that example to say that doesn't happen on its own. And if you look in the history of our country, for example, that really took someone thinking about it and saying, I know for a fact I earn so little. And we know that effect, just given, we're talking about someone who was a security guard. We're talking perhaps someone who was doing gardening, someone who's cleaning someone's house and washing their clothes to earn a living. And they would say, I want to sacrifice a portion of what I earn to be able to give an opportunity to my child of education, right? Because That's going to be the bridge to a better life. And we know some of the examples that we have. It could even be someone say, I just want them to learn a little bit extra maths. I want them to learn a little bit extra English so that they can do well, right? What does that do, Bra Ops? And we've got so many stories of that, right? That means when that person makes it to a University of Technology, gets a good job, their world changes. They come back, first lift their family. In many instances, it's siblings that are being helped by that first person in the family to get tertiary education, lift the siblings so the family is at a little bit of a better place. Many other people doing that, the community is at a better place. And I want to argue, Bra Ops, that when we hear of those stories, I don't think we pause enough and say, what did this family, this parent, often a single black parent, often ugogo, right, being able to do that? We don't pause and say, what did they do about the finances in the household to allow that? They manage them well, perhaps. They say to themselves, I'm earning this much. Before I do anything with money, I'm going to take a small portion and pay for those extra English lessons, or pay for those extra math lessons, or pay for the child to be able to get a taxi and go to town at Robin to get someone to tutor them. That's good financial management. We often don't see that. Can you see the power of saying, I'm not going to use the money? It's not that there's no needs that I have in the family. No, there are many needs. But this one, it's for a specific purpose. It's for a goal. The goal to educate this person, this child, so that when they have that education, it's a bridge to a better life, and then they come. So we're talking budgeting. We're talking saving. We're talking planning about the money. This amount, we're talking perhaps delaying gratification. I want a new pair of shoes. I want pay TV, for example. I want a branded clothing. Maybe I even want this type of food. I want to go on holiday, but no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put this aside for the goal of educating the child. Can you see the power of personal finance in a household?
You remind me of the reality of, I speak about this often when I have conversations with you about a marketplace. As you drive into Toyando,
you have spoken about that.
There's a marketplace of women who sell fruits and vegetables almost 24 hours. They sleep in that area. Yeah. They run their businesses in that area. And what I've discovered is that generations of graduates have come out of the meager earnings that come out of those small businesses. So what I'm hearing you say is that the disciplines of personal finance, the insights of personal finance, the ability of somebody who's engaged in disciplined personal finance to see into the future becomes an asset to our communities, to South Africa's communities, and to the continental community, if we allow ourselves to really understand the relationship that we have with money for the needs that we have.
Without a doubt. And two more things, Brother Ops, I want to add. To add, if you stick with this example of the family, the other thing we often don't see, Brother Ops, is this. When you have, irrespective of how much money is coming into a household, but you have a concerted effort to manage it better, right? What does that also do, Brother Ops? That means the quality of parenting is better. How do I know? I know because when there's financial stress in the household, it simply means that whether it's a single caregiver or it's dual caregivers, there's a component of their thinking, their bandwidth, right? If you think of the mind, that is consumed by survival, day to day. Where are we going to get food to eat? Where is the money for rent going to come from? Are we going to be able to get this child to finish their education? Whereas when there's better planning, when that money is managed a little bit better, and it's not that you have a lot, and it's not that financial stress disappears, but it's somewhat less. You have better parenting. because the person is to a lesser degree consumed about kind of day-to-day survival, about putting a meal on the table. And what happens when you have better parenting? We have better conversations between caregivers and children about what you want to do when you grow up. How can I help you? The child is allowed to dream a little bit more because there is less stress and worries about money, right? Do you see the impact? And of course, we're talking about this family. Think of that at a community level, the impact of that. Then the last one, perhaps, is when you're putting money aside and you develop that habit at a family level, community, at a country level, you benefit as a nation. Why? One of the things we know, whether it's from my research at Gibbs or from my research at Nedbank Ops, is this. If you look, let's even pack the US, let's go to the east. If we look at Japan, if we look at South Korea, for example, if you look at China, what is one of the things that is vastly different from Africa? It's that their people, the citizens, they save far more than we do. Do you know, perhaps, in China, families save up to 30% of their household income. Their GDP, gross domestic product, for example, just how much goods and services are produced in the economy. We're talking 10, 15, 20% when you look at their savings levels. South Africa, we're looking at 0.5%. Why does that matter, bro? When that child has an idea to start a business, when you and I want to do something on artificial intelligence, we need someone to fund us. When you have a country with people who save, you have this pool of capital that is waiting to be deployed into business. If I go to a bank says no, I go to a development institution that is able to help. So can you see the power of personal finance at the household level? We're putting a little bit of money aside, community, country, then we've got all these savings that drive the growth of the economy. And so for me, Ops, I say, when we talk about personal finance, we're not just talking about household saving. We're talking about nation building. Because if we do that, we make sure that our entrepreneurs, whether they want to sell fat cooks, whether they want to build a company that is utilizing artificial intelligence, or they want to build antibiotics, it doesn't matter. It's a little bit easier for them to access capital. And Africa needs that.
My guest is Dr. Frank Magwegwe. He is head of financial wellness at Nedbank. He's also a faculty member at Gibbs Business School at the University of Pretoria. We're talking about personal finance as a catalyst to the development of South Africa and of the African economy as a whole. Dr. Frank, I imagine that in conversations that you have about personal finance, one of the questions that arises is, how do I even manage my personal finance if I don't even have money that is coming in, which is a reality that many people in South Africa are facing. Many people on the African continent are facing, not only because of the realities of the present issues that encumber our economies, but also because of historical issues that have to do with our legacy with colonialism and apartheid and all of those kinds of things. How do you say to somebody that, yes, personal finance, the disciplines that are associated with managing your income are going to help you develop the mindsets that are going to help you take advantage of the opportunities that are there in technology, in science, in AI, when I don't even have an income to begin with? How do we even start that conversation?
And it's so powerful that you sort of intro the solution. I don't know if you are aware you already did that, because you said, how do we develop this mindset? You know, sitting here, I'm actually getting a little bit emotional because you're reminding me. Many years ago, and I've shared this story with you, I said in July of 1993, corner Plain and Wanderer Street in downtown Joburg, selling fruits and veggies. A month before I started this little business, I'd been homeless for 7 months. So from about January 1993 to end of June 1990, is in struggling life on the streets of Joburg. And so the reason I'm saying this, Bra Ops, is I've become so convinced that it's less to do with not having money. I want to come back to that. It's important to have money.
Sure.
But I think in my own experience, what I have seen is the power of a mindset. What is a mindset, Bra Ops? It's beliefs, it's attitudes about something. Excuse me. So when I look back, I'm thinking, there I was, Bra Ops, and I just had one dream to say, I may be selling fruit and veggies today. I'm not going to end here. Where am I going? I don't know. But I just was dreaming of bigger things.
You didn't know at that stage
I
that
didn't
you would
know.
one day become the head of wellness at Nedbank.
Or even get a PhD, Bra Ops.
You didn't know that?
Not at all.
Okay.
And for me, it was just this desire to say, I'm at this station today. This is what I'm doing. And I'm going to be good at it. I wake up in the morning. I go to the Johannesburg Fresh Produce Market. I buy my stuff. I come back. I sell it. Right? So I just had that mindset. So I think you could say it was probably three things within that mindset. One was, this is going to get me somewhere. Let me be good at it, number one. The second thing was, I can grow from this. What can I learn? So it was that eagerness to learn. Wake up in the morning, 4 a.m., wait for a taxi to fill up between 4 and 5, then it goes to City Deep, then you come back. There was that, right? And then the third thing, perhaps, people don't put a lot of value on it, is the idea of optimism. That just, I'm going to be something tomorrow. I have this goal, you know, I'm just going to dream big. I'm going to allow myself to dream, right? And I know there are many people in South Africa, across the continent, with stories like that, right? Of dreaming big. And so, I want then to link that to your question, to say, when you don't dream big, you are allowing your circumstances to hold you back, right? Because what are you doing, perhaps? You are saying, I have so little, or sometimes I have nothing, right? And I'm going to stop myself from dreaming until I have something. Do you see what you're doing to yourself? So your mindset is holding you back. Whereas if you say, you know what, I may not have much today. In fact, I'm hungry. I didn't have enough to eat. But I'm going to try to figure out how do I break this chain of scarcity? How can I think big and allow myself, even though I don't have much, to say there's a future that's possible? If we can help people, even in circumstances of not having enough, to remain positive, to not be bondage to not having, and to look at people that we know so much about, whether we're talking from political freedom, if you think of Tata Nelson Mandela, if you think of some of the entrepreneurs, Dangote in Nigeria, where they started from, just thinking big. There is power for me in mindset. So I want to start there. And it's part of what we must do in our education system, part of what we must do as we raise families, as we raise kids, part of what we do when we have our nieces and nephews. I think we must encourage and help people not lose that power of a mindset of believing in bigger things, in dreaming of a future. It might not come exactly as you are dreaming about it, but it will certainly allow you to continue to fight, to continue to box, to continue to say, I have to be out of these conditions, right? And so anyone who's thinking, who is saying to themselves, I don't have enough, how can I even think of saving? I'm saying the first thing to do is a mindset that believes I can overcome my obstacles. Once you have done that, you allow your mind to be creative. Perhaps can I tell you, I was selling fruit and veg, like everybody else. 6 bananas for 1 rand. 4, what you call them? Tomatoes for 6 rand, or for 1 rand, sorry. Potatoes for 1 rand, right? Grapes, strawberries.
In the good old days when
apples.
In the good old days when tomatoes were 1 rand.
Yeah. All those different things, right? Red grapes, white grapes. I just want to illustrate the power of belief. One day I said to myself, what is stopping me from putting one red apple, one green golden delicious, some strawberries, and a banana in one packet and sell it for 1 rand. What's stopping me from doing that? What's stopping me from putting 2 potatoes, your carbohydrates, 2 tomatoes, a little bit of chilies, and an onion for 1 rand? And my business started doing so well just from selling mixed fruits and mixed veggies. And I'm highlighting it's about a mindset of wanting to improve yourself. It's about a mindset of I don't want to be held back. But also, I think, perhaps, lest it sounds like, you can do it alone. There's also, for me, the power of social support. Observing what other people are doing, being inspired by other people, being okay with asking for help. I remember asking Evelyn, a lady who was selling next to me, much more experienced in selling fruit and veggies, just to say, but I'm buying them at the fruit and veggie shop in the CBD, but you don't buy them there. Where do you buy? And she just laughed and said, no, it's expensive when we buy it. Let's go where those people with a wholesale in the CBD where they buy in the Johannesburg fresh produce market. So there's a little bit of that. Let me finish off with this idea. When you don't have enough, you often wait and say, I want to have thousands of rands. Then I'll be able to budget and save. Let me tell you, perhaps, I had nothing from being homeless. Then moving to selling fruits and veggies, 50 bucks, 100 bucks, 500 bucks. This is what I've learned. Can you develop good personal financial management habits for the little that you have? Once you have that solid foundation, it helps you manage more as you do better in life, whether an entrepreneur or you are working for yourself.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that the challenges that you encounter at an individual level in your personal finance management process are exactly the same things that you are going to encounter when you earn more, when you run a big business.
Yes.
But they have to be internalized and understood at the level of the personal finance management place. Almost to say that the management of your personal finance is the school. It's the groundwork that you need in order for you to develop the disciplines that must be applied to your finances at a higher level, maybe at a business level, at a collective level, or whatever the case may be. I hear that, Dr. Frank. I hear that. I want to ask the question that says, when we say to people that let's use the little that we have, and when we have nothing, let us use our own mindsets, our own ingenuity to find a way, basically, is what you're saying to me. And interestingly, that every time you and I talk about personal finance, we invariably end up talking about psychology, about behavioral issues, about the inner resources of a human being. Most people on this continent, most people in this country are depressed because of the economic realities that we find ourselves in. And sometimes the very idea of using your inner resources, the very idea of developing the mindset of the hunter, where there is none to make something, is itself very hard to reach. How do we start that process? How do we catalyze that so that we can begin to take advantage of some of the things that you've said today? Interestingly, before I let you answer the question also, is that we haven't spoken about graphs and percentages and all of these things.
Not at all.
We've spoken about the human being and the stuff that goes on inside of us in order for us to be able to take advantage of the opportunities that might be there through the vehicle of personal finance. But how do we? How do we, for a population that is largely depressed for many, many reasons, get people to see the possibility of sunshine out there?
I think a couple of things. Perhaps I spend a lot of time thinking about that. When just also going to my journey that I've just said now, the part of my journey. And I think I'm going to offer probably 3 things that I think can help. The first one, I think often we don't realize the power of leadership, perhaps. What do I mean by that? I mean the power to lead oneself. Before you can lead anyone, you need to lead yourself, right? And I have seen it. When you talk about a mindset and leading self, it's about realizing what's happening inside me. I'm a little bit afraid. I'm depressed. I'm giving up hope. I think this is so difficult. I can't do it, right? To be aware of how are you feeling, to be aware of how you are thinking. But it mustn't stop there. And then you have to say to yourself, stop. The way I'm thinking, it's not going to get me to where I want to be. It's not going to get me out of the current challenging situation. So you paint a picture of someone who's struggling with financing. Things are so hard. I'm struggling to put food on the table. I earn so little if I'm fortunate to have a job, or I'm doing a little bit of work by myself, right? I'm self-employed in other ways. When I talk about leading self, we often don't put a lot of emphasis. What I'm saying, perhaps, is when you lead yourself, what is one of the ingredients that you should have? It's about having a goal. Waking up and saying, I'm here, but I would like to get there tomorrow, next week, 6 months, a year from now. It costs you nothing. It's the idea of dreaming. And I know when you often talk, people say, give me money to start a business. I don't want a dream. But ask any entrepreneur, where did they start? They didn't have money.
There must be a reason.
There must be a dream, bro. There must be a reason. Why do you want to do what you want to do? That's the starting point. And we move further. So I'm arguing, perhaps, that to get out of where you are, each individual, as tough as it is, you must have a vision of the future. Some vision of you doing something.
However humble it may be.
Like me, getting off the street, I'm selling fruit and veggies. Just a small baby step. We've got to start there. So if you and your family are just saying to yourself, I want my kids to have a different life from what I'm going through today. This is what consumes me. How can I do it? Right? To just start with your situation where you are. And you're trying to be creative to improve the family, starting with that, right? So that's self-leadership. How am I thinking? What's happening? Am I asking for help? Am I looking for opportunity? I think that's so important. And then I'm adding to that this idea of a vision, this idea of having a goal, right? And then the third thing I want to offer is I think we don't do enough of trying to understand our role models. How did they get where they are? Right? Because often what happens, and I love the example that you gave earlier, perhaps, that when someone has done so well, I mean, we think, for example, of, this just amazing story of Nigeria and Dangote and how he's built these massive businesses, right? And we've got so many stories in Africa around that. I think we don't do a good job. We don't do justice to storytelling. Where did he start? Where was he born? How many were there in their family? How did he get his first breakthrough? When we interrogate that, perhaps, I promise you, 8 out of 10, we will realize, for Africa, there is no family wealth. The person had to sit and say, how do I improve my situation? Life can't just be like this. There is no intergenerational wealth in our Africa. It's starting to come through, but it's far in between. It's a person being resourceful. And so what I'm saying is, when you're sitting and thinking, it's so hard, I just need to put food on the table, I can't even overcome this, I've got nothing. I'm saying if we tell our African stories of how people have got to, we inspire others. And we move away from this idea of people being self-made. We realize It's the community. It's being resourceful. It's asking for help. It's this door closes, you go to the next door. You push the other one. So there's this idea of, for me, of being resourceful, this idea of telling enough of our, South African stories. You look at all these amazing books we love. We love reading about the US. We love reading about North America. We love, talking China and the East. Are we doing enough? Whether we're talking personal finance, we're talking entrepreneurs, we're talking leadership. I think we need to do more, own our stories and tell more to inspire generations.
Dr. Frank, as we come to a close of this conversation, I want to hear your thoughts about this very idea that we talk about in this country, black tax, and how you connect that to personal finance. It's a term that has become part of the colloquial conversation in South Africa.
Yeah.
But I'm interested, and it obviously has something to do with personal finance.
It does.
I'm interested to hear your thoughts about it as a concept, but also what it does to contribute to our mindset of resilience, of looking for opportunities, of having a goal, of generally having a mentality of abundance, what that idea does, and whether it is an idea for us to continue to be pursuing as South Africans and generally as Africans.
I love that question, Bra-Obs. And I was telling my wife that I was so excited, and my daughter, and I said to them, guys, we talk a lot about black tax. And I just come from Kenya in earlier this year. And I said, do you know there's something similar? I said, what do you mean? They talk about kinship tax. They don't use the phrase black tax, kinship tax, right? And if you look in North America, for example, they talk of the sandwich generation. Kind of you and your family, right? You need to help them, but you've got your parents who are also looking, up to you to guide them often. And so, especially in Europe, where, people are generally older, they're an aging population, and there's lots of, supporting family. So here's your family, you're stuck between your own family and parents, right? So, and I'm starting there, to say language matters, firstly. And sometimes we start thinking, this is a concept unique to South Africa.
Yes.
Black tax. I can achieve things in life because of black tax. So I just started by saying, it's not really, it's called different things in different kinship tax, for example, what I found in Kenya. Or, kind of your sandwich, first thing. Second thing, I don't really like the term black tax. Why? I think for me, when I think of tax, I have to pay what I have to pay that due, but it's a grudge thing. But I know it's required for development, but I don't also want to pay a cent more. I want to pay exactly what's required of me by the tax authorities, nothing more. So I don't like thinking of it like that. Why, Bra-Obs? Because for me, I would rather think of it as, if I have done a little bit better, whether it's in my immediate family or in community, what we're being asked of, for me, is Ubuntu. What do I mean? There is no one who does well as an island. You are going back either to your immediate family and saying, I want to help one or two others. Or you are going to your community, and it can be financial or with skills. When we limit it to black tax, we're not just talking money. But someone who's good at math, someone who's good at accounting, why not go and plow those skills at your school? When you think of it like that, and I love the abundance that you spoke about, do you see how, Bra-Obs, you just have got so many things you can help with other than money? To your school, have a prize for the top accounting student. To your community, make it safe. Have tutoring in your community. So I think when we focus on black tax, as in the money that I'm giving others, and it's a tax on me, I think we limit our creativity, and it becomes kind of a grudge thing. Whereas if we say, I'm paying it forward, I help this one, please also help another one, and help another one, kind of we are thinking in abundance. So I think it limits creativity. I think it I don't really think it speaks to, if you think, in Africa, no one, it takes a village to raise a child. I think it goes almost against kind of wow, we, as Africans. It's not new, and so it limits your own thinking when you just say, black tax in South Africa. There it is, kinship tax, in Kenya. I want to finish off with this. I don't want to sound as if, perhaps I'm saying it's not there and it affects personal finance. I think what you can do about it from a personal finance concept, for me, is the following, right? Is to say, I have my own budget. I've got my own spending plan, in other words. I will incorporate in my spending plan helping others. That's how I think about it. When I have helped per month up to the budget I've set aside, I can tell others that I'm no longer able to help you this month because I've already contributed to my community, to my school, or to my immediate family. In other words, have boundaries to make sure that your helping others doesn't negatively impact your own personal finance, doesn't impact your own growth and your own ability to continue to help others. So I'm just generally a person who doesn't like the term. I think, or I also don't like scarcity mindset. Not just in money, there are skills we can develop, we can ask for help, and I just think when we use the term black tax, we sometimes limit our creativity, we limit how we can help others, and kind of the community, that ubuntu, that you grow as an individual through engaging with others, contributing to society, and society contributing back to you.
Sounds to me like you are saying that we should also have the fortitude to understand the responsibility of boundaries as Africans. Dr. Frank, we close now, and I'd like for you to recap on some of the ideas that we've had as to what can personal finance do to help not only South Africa unlock the developmental potential that's there, but also the continent, because the understanding is that South Africa cannot be an island on its own. It has to be part of a greater collective, and that is the continent. The continent has to be part of the greater greater collective, and that is the globe. As you go back to some of the main points that you've pulled out for us this evening, what does personal finance do for the catalyzing of development in South Africa and the continent?
I think for me the first thing is, let us develop a mindset of understanding our relationship with money. What does money mean to me? Does it mean freedom? Does it mean security? How do I manage it? What do I do with the little that I have, right? That's the starting point. Because if we wait to get lots of it down the road, but we haven't developed habits to manage it well, we may be found wanting. So I'm putting on the table that personal finance is more than rands and cents. There is something about how you think, engage with money, and the emotions it triggers. Spend time reflecting on that at an individual level. Second, I want to argue that filters through to a one-man shop, to a 5-man, to someone who's grown his business to 100 people. Why? Because even in a company, for an entrepreneur, what's happening? You're dealing with money.
Sure.
It might be bigger sums of money, but you're dealing with money. How do you engage with it? Paying others, sharing it with others, fairness in wages. You can see that also comes through. And also understanding where must you deploy it so that you can grow your business. You can still see personal finance through the organization as I'm just now managing money on behalf of a company. That is important. Number 3, we don't spend enough time realizing that as we educated our primary school kids, our high school, tertiary, on managing money well, as we help our grown-ups who often hesitate have that opportunity, perhaps we're not just helping them about finances. We're building a nation. Why do I say that? Because when we help people manage money, and they now know how to put money aside for retirement savings, for emergency savings, that is the money that entrepreneurs, small business owners, tap into to start their businesses. whether through a bank or development finance. And we have evidence from the East in particular, where they have huge savings pools, right? So that's important for me. In addition, I think when we help people manage money well, one of the things we don't realize is the stress we reduce on them. And so we unleash their potential to be creative, to be problem solvers, to think abundance, to parent better, to be better human beings, because they are less stressed or depressed, you mentioned that area, about day-to-day finance.
Yeah.
Finally, for me, Bra Ops, I think when we connect, where some of our more successful entrepreneurs across the continent, where did they start? How many doors did they break? I want to use that expression. They broke doors to be able to get funding, perhaps, and get to where they are, to get their idea, and to make that idea flourish. When we tell those stories, we help young people, we help older people struggling now to realize those very same heroes we look up to, they started somewhere. Let's tell our stories of personal finance, of entrepreneurship, of abundance in South Africa and across the continent.
Dr. Frank Magwegwe, once again, an inspirational conversation about personal finance and how it can unlock development here in South Africa and the rest of the continent. Join us again as we talk development on the Truth in Development, powered by DSO Consulting. Thank you for joining us.